Test. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, both of you? Both of you? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Kjo është Shirley, kjo është
Një, dy, tre, një, dy. Një, dy, tre, prova. Një, dy, tre, katër, test, prova. Një, dy, një, dy. Një, dy, tre, katër.
Am një gjanë mu tash? Okej, mirë, hajtë.
Një, dy.
Kur nga trohesh i fut.
Anglist, 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 Anglist. Okay.
Përshëndetje të gjithëve. E nderuar.
Hello, everyone. Dear Deputy Speaker of the Assembly, Mr. Felay, dear Mrs. Kochiu, dear ambassadors, representatives of the civil society, dear participants. As an MP and Deputy Chair of the Parliamentary Committee on Education and Public Information means, I'm happy to be the moderator of the opening session today and welcome you to the Assembly of Albania for the special session of the 10th International Forum on Building Peace in Times of Crisis, the role of Agenda for Women, Peace and Security, organized by the Civil Society Action Network in cooperation with the organization Women's Center for Women Development in Albania. I'd like to welcome all the participants, especially the peace-building women from 40 different countries of the world, mainly from the conflict areas. Your presence here today is welcomed and very much appreciated. It demonstrates the power and importance of international cooperation in our joint efforts for peace and security. This forum is a unique opportunity to discuss global challenges and to share innovative strategies that peace-building women use at the global level. It is also an opportunity to prevent violence. It's an opportunity to transform crises and conflicts. Albania has marked achievements and important contributions in the implementation of the 1325 resolution, as well as in advancing our agenda for women, peace and security. Allow me to bring to you some of these achievements. First of all, the approval and implementation of the first action plan 2018-2020. Albania has successfully finalized the implementation of measures of this action plan, achieving 82% realization of this action plan. In addition, we have had an increase of 5.53% in our participation in peace-building military missions. It is also worth mentioning the integration, the gender mainstreaming in our government cabinet, in our policies, and in our national security agenda. In 2021, 12 out of 17 members of the government cabinet were women, the biggest number in the history of Albania. I'd like to mention here what Prime Minister Edi Rama says. This new government will will be the government with the biggest number of women. 12 out of 17 members of the cabinet.
Ngjitur Shqipërinë.
This takes Albania to the top of the global ranking when it comes to percentage of women in government cabinets. This also comes with a significant increase of the percentage of women in parliament, in municipality councils, and in general in politics and decision-making. Another important achievement is the strengthened cooperation and partnerships at the international level with organizations like NATO, European Union, and other international agencies of the United Nations. Particularly, we have in the Security Council of the United Nations, Albania as a member. Albania has used this role to effectively promote the implementation of the agenda for women, peace and security, as well as to advocate for the integration of the gender perspective at the global level. Allow me to express my appreciation and my gratefulness for the support of our international partners like the United Nations, NATO, European Union, and OSCE, which have given a valuable contribution for Albania's progress. Considering the continuous importance of implementing Resolution 1325, we are determined to further deepen our cooperation with the United Nations and with our international partners to ensure the full and effective implementation of this resolution. I would also like to thank all those who have contributed significantly to the implementation of this resolution. I would also like to encourage all stakeholders at the national and international level to continue their efforts and their cooperation to guarantee more opportunities for women and girls, for peace, security, and for building sustainable communities. Dear participants, it is our honor to have with us today some personalities and leaders of different institutions. They will be talking to us and sharing their experience with us in this opening session. It is my pleasure to introduce you to 6 honorable women. Ms. Ermonela Felau, the Deputy Speaker of the Assembly of Albania. She will open this session and she will share with us the commitment of the Albanian Assembly in advancing the women's security and peace agenda. Mrs. Albana Kociu, she is the Minister of Health and Social Protection in Albania, and she will focus on the importance of gender mainstreaming, importance of integrating the women's security and peace agenda in our social policies. Mrs. Megi Fino, Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs in Albania. She will emphasize, among others, the role of Albania in its international efforts for peace and security. Mrs. Lady Dervishi. She is the director of the Coordination Center Against Violent Extremism. She will share with us the experience of this institution in addressing extremism and in promoting security in the country. Mrs. Rodina Cholaku, she is the executive director of the Women's Center for Development and Culture in Albania. She will talk about the efforts and the contribution of civil society organizations in advancing our women, security and peace agenda. And finally, Mrs. Sanam Naraki Andalia. She is the executive director of the International Action Network, Civil Society Action Network. She will share with us her experience and challenges in promoting peace and security for women, focusing particularly on the contribution of this network at the global level. Thank you all. Thank you, Ms. Ermonela Felau. The floor is yours. Thank you, colleague, once again. Hello, everyone. I believe the Assembly of Albania today has a special privilege. The privilege of welcoming young women and girls from different countries of the world under a very specific agenda, like the agenda on women, peace and security. So welcome to the Assembly of Albania. It is my honor to welcome you on behalf of the Speaker of the Assembly, Mrs. Lindita Nicola. I would like to share with you her best regards and wish you success in this very important forum. The topic chosen for today, building peace in times of crisis, is a response to the global and local concerns that the world faces today, the European Parliament and the region where we belong. We would like to discuss even other topics, maybe more entertaining topics. The Assembly of Albania, like many other parliaments, is often involved, in such topics. However, discussing security and peace in such times needs to be a topic for everyone in our efforts for a better world. We live in times where women, peace and security has become the main topic. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, considering what is happening around us, It's certainly not good to be discussing this again, but it's so good, on the other hand, to have so many dedicated people who are willing to share their experience, what they have faced. There can be no peace in an unstable region. There can be no security if half of the population is threatened or suffers economic injustice, political injustice, social or religious injustice. Of course, there can be no peace, no security if in the suburbs of our region or continent, war and conflict continues. They take lives, and we all know that the most vulnerable ones are the ones who suffer. We know that it's women and it's children. The risk and consequences of humanitarian crisis, or the risk even from climate change, as I was talking earlier with Ms. Anderlini, this has become really like the main topic in the agenda of many parliaments in the world. Well, similarly, the same happens with our agenda for today. So this all becomes even more important in a context of crisis and wars. The risks become more imminent. And the more this demands women and girls, especially the elected ones, to contribute to building peace. Well, it all starts from our families, of course. It starts from our communities. It starts from our society, institutions, and organizations, be it regional or international organizations. And it starts with the efforts of all of us. We all need to work for peace, well-being, solidarity, and humanism. The Assembly of Albania has not only its national agenda, but it also supports all regional and international initiatives for peace and security. Our parliament has actually encouraged the Albanian government and all representatives of Albanian executive institutions to increase their contribution to these initiatives. Well, it's nothing new for the Parliament of Albania. I mean, this agenda today is not new for us. It is for this agenda that we have met every beginning of December. We have discussed our achievements, we have discussed our challenges as well, and we have not done that alone. Every time we have made sure that we do this with the leaders of the main institutions. So whatever concerns we see, where we operate, whatever information we get from sharing with people, we have made sure that it becomes, it goes to the attention of the central institutions. Albania has created and continues to create some added values. And I'm talking about the Albanian presidency, Albanian chairmanship of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe in 2020. Albania's role as a non-permanent member, as we may be aware, as a president of the United Nations for 2022-2023, which was a very important year, especially for the Albanian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I would refer to the contribution Albania has given to the United Nations Security Council, together with the United States of America, and we have the representative of the U.S. Embassy here, and I would like to welcome them here. We've also given contribution to other initiatives for peace, and Albania has been appreciated for that internationally. Albania will continue to support the Action Plan for Women's Security and Peace agenda as a contribution to gender equality, as the best way to support economic, political, and social equality for women. My colleague mentioned it earlier. Over the years, we have done a lot to increase women's participation in politics. We have had some achievements, but it's not that we are happy yet, because we will still need to make sure that these women who are elected to represent their communities, who are elected to exercise important duties, set role models for other women to follow, and for other young women to feel confident enough that they can contribute to their society and to their country. I can assure you, as one of the members of Albanian Parliament, as an MP since 2009, that Albanian MPs are really committed. They are really committed to issues we are discussing here today. And I really hope that today's discussion serves us to better understand things, to be more visionary, and to plan better. So I would like to end my speech here, so I leave more time for people who are maybe more active and who are probably even more experienced than me, to talk. So I'd like to wish you success once again, wish success to this very important forum. And again, I'd like to repeat, I'm happy we have this forum being held here in the Albanian Parliament. Hello, everyone. Dear Deputy Speaker of the Albanian Parliament, dear Evis, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, partners. It is really a pleasure to be in a room full of people where most of the people are women and young women. Well, many of us belong to a generation who have gone through war and conflict. However, for more than 20 years, domination of peace in this part of the world made us believe that efforts to find ways for peace belong to the past. Well, unfortunately, that is not true. Today, when war and conflict is spreading, when Europe has become like the theater of a very fierce conflict, the importance of solidarity becomes more important than ever. Of course, building peace in times of crisis is really important. Of course, our discussions in this room will not stop the Russian aggression in Ukraine or any other conflicts. And again, unfortunately, there is no imminent solution. There is, however, a solution that wherever it is applied, it has shown that it works, and that is the involvement of women in life and gender equality. The data from the United Nations show that peace agreements reached with the participation of women are more likely to resist time. The same data show us that countries with a better gender equality are less likely to use force in solving their conflicts. There is a clear correlation between women and peace, an equation which says that women equals peace. I would also like to refer to our honorable friend, Mrs. Anderlini, who has said that empowering women is not only a matter of justice, it is a strategic approach for every society that wants to thrive. The role of women is essential to economic, political life of every community. And this is exactly what we have been trying to do in Albania. I personally feel privileged to be part of one of the cabinets, one of the few cabinets in the world where most of the members are women. I'm also proud of this parliament where for each legislator we have had an increasingly smaller gap between women and men MPs. Albania is one of those few countries which has not only ratified resolutions, but it has also harmonized their objectives, integrating them in our legislation, our national strategies and action plans. It was just in December 2023 that we approved our second action plan for Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security, encouraging in this way the participation of women in sectors that have been traditionally dominated by men, like peace building missions, for instance. And today we have more women than ever before in our armed forces, in our international missions, in our peace-building missions, diplomacy, foreign affairs, and even in the leadership of public administration. The Ministry of Defense was led for the first time by a woman in 2013. In 2016, the first woman in Albania was appointed as a general in the armed forces. The Parliamentary Security Committee was also led by a woman for the first time. So again, the gap between men and women when it comes to entrepreneurship or other aspects of life is narrowing down. Albania has done its best to promote peace through advancement of gender equality in the international agenda, especially during the OSCE chairmanship in 2020 and during our mandate in the UN Security Council in 2022-2023. However, we are aware that all these achievements are not enough to change the fact that there is still a lot to be done to achieve peace and equality. So in this sense, the Ministry of Health and Social Protection, which I have the privilege to lead, has an essential role in promoting equality for all. Equality for women and girls who find themselves in underprivileged situations. We have today certain mechanisms and community-based mechanisms in cooperation with the civil society. Our shelter for victims of violence, our support for the integration of victims of violence is what we have done. Still, there's a lot more to be done, and I assure you that this is exactly what we are doing. And I would like to end my speech by referring to one of the well-known Albanian women. It's a strong woman who, through her voice, has amazed international partners. It's Ermonela Yaho, our famous singer. She says, investing in women means investing in your future, because women have the power to change not only their own destiny, women have the power to change the destiny of the world. Therefore, I wish success to today's session, and let's get together to change the destiny of the world. Dear Deputy Speaker of the Assembly, dear Minister, Mrs. Anderlini, dear participants, it is really a pleasure for me to be part of this activity, discussing such an important topic today. It is also a good opportunity to thank the International Civil Society Network for organizing this event. This is the 10th meeting of this forum, and it comes at a very decisive time when we find ourselves in a disturbed geopolitics with long consequences, and especially for women. This format represents actually a safe space where we can all exchange ideas, practices, and best practices actually in advancing our agenda for peace, women, and security. This is also an opportunity to explore further the role of women in this aspect. Regardless of a wide legislative framework, there is still a big gap between what is achieved on paper and what we see in practice in the field. And this is especially visible when it comes to lack of representation in decision-making processes for peace and security, or the level of impunity for authors, for perpetrators of violence against women. And this includes sexual violence in conflict situations. We are all witnesses today of what is happening to women's rights in violent conflicts or hunger. Women who are committed in peace-building missions, women who protect human rights, women who promote gender equality, who play a decisive role in advancing our agenda for peace, women and security, human rights and gender equality, find themselves threatened continuously because of their efforts to build a better society and to protect their fundamental rights. In Ukraine, the unprovoked aggression, the illegitimate aggression by Russia, has had destructive consequences for women's rights. In Afghanistan, women have gone through unimaginable torture. Again, a violation of their human rights. I believe we are all aware that today, more than ever, we need international mechanisms that go beyond the existing barriers and ensure the significant participation of women in political life. In this framework, it is very important to have even a stronger commitment, especially to harmonize government practices in harmonization with 1325 resolution and later resolutions. It is so important to empower mechanisms for women's rights, especially in countries at a high risk or in conflict areas. The stronger the movement, the stronger the rights of these women. We know how important it is to increase cooperation with civil society organizations to identify good practices and promoters of women's rights. An increase of awareness, increased efforts to address this phenomenon is also very important. In Albania's commitment as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council, Albania actively promoted a zero-tolerance approach to attacks against women protecting human rights all over the world. For Albania's government, advancing this agenda on women's security and peace remains a priority not only in theory but also in terms of concrete action. Assuring women's participation at all levels, we have seen the real benefits. So what happens when a society is capable of ensuring the real participation of women in the long term? So in the context of this agenda, Albania has seen how important the contribution of women is in public and political life at the international and regional level, including at the level of UN, NATO, OSCE, and with other strategic partners. Albania has joined other countries which have an action plan for the implementation of Resolution 1325. It was in 2018 when we approved our first action plan. As already emphasized by the minister, in 2022, Albania started preparing its second action plan. Our active approach to women's security and peace agenda is also in harmony with the Sustainable Development Goals 5 and 16. It is also in harmonization with NATO and EU policies. As a result of these policies, Albania ranks significantly better and continuously better. The Global Gender Gap Index for 2023 ranked Albania the 17th in the list. And finally, I would like to emphasize something I think we are all aware of. Without women, there can be no sustainable peace. The expertise, knowledge, experience, and the capacity of women to understand community needs to be recognized and needs to be considered in all peace-building missions. And the message should be clear. Inclusive and long-term peace cannot be achieved without the significant participation of women. Thank you, and I wish you success. Hello, dear Deputy Speaker of the Parliament, dear Minister, Mrs. Kociu, dear Mrs. Kushi, dear ambassadors, dear participants, dear peace-building women. I have already shared some of my journey with you. And dear Mrs. Anderlini, you have supported us for years against violent extremism and prevention of radicalism through an inclusive approach. It is a special honor for me to be here today. to talk about the role of women's security and peace agenda in this special session in this 10th forum of the forum of the international network, to emphasize the important and inalienable role of women as a factor that guarantees peace in our region. This resolution, approved in 2000, was a very important starting point. It emphasized the role that women should play in preventing and solving conflicts, as well as in preserving peace and security in the world. This resolution obliges all countries to increase participation of women at the decision-making levels, at local, national, and regional level, making sure that women are seen not only as victims of war, but also as important players in preserving peace and security. Resolution 1325, which was mentioned by all other previous speakers, emphasizes the strong commitment to gender equality in our security and defense policies, especially when it is about our fight against terrorism and violent extremism. This resolution is in full harmony with our national plans, and this was already mentioned by Minister Kochiu. This strategic integration empowers women. It helps them use their unique knowledge in drafting policies. It also assures us that our approach to violent extremism is an inclusive approach. These efforts are essential not only to increase gender equality, but also to make our strategies more effective. Research shows that negotiations for peace include, where they include women, such negotiations are much more sustainable. Including women in these processes helps us build capacities in our societies. It helps our societies be more resilient to extremism. So Albania's approach is not only about fulfilling its international requirements, it's also about strategic decisions to protect our rights and which contribute to the global peace. Empowering women remains a priority for Albania at the national and international level. It remains a priority as it was already mentioned even during our mandate in the UN Security Council. This commitment goes hand in hand with our fight against violent extremism and terrorism. We have an Albanian saying, change starts with you. So, coming from the Counter Violent Extremism Center, which is an institution under the Prime Minister's office and under the Minister of Interior today, our center has 8 staff members. 6 of them are women. Well, this is a significant number, and it clearly shows the gender perspective of the Albanian government, even when it comes to security matters. When it comes to preventing violent extremism or the rehabilitation of citizens returned from conflict areas in Syria and Iraq, we have had an excellent cooperation with regional partners and civil society organizations. And this has made Albania have some of the best practices in the region, and not only. And allow me to mention here that some of my counterparts I'm the only woman running a counter-violent extremism center in the region, in the Western Balkans. I was appointed by the Prime Minister Edi Rama, which again shows the approach of the Albanian government. Well, in our daily work, we have always tried to lead by example. In whatever working group we've been part of, we've tried to encourage women, include women, help them commit, women who do give a significant contribution in the front line, not only to prevent radicalization or violent extremism, but also when it comes to programs for the rehabilitation of vulnerable people returned from the conflict areas. The policy of our counter-violent extremism is a soft policy. We focus on raising awareness, capacity building. We focus on an inclusive approach. Since our creation, we have strongly worked for building different networks. One of these networks is our women network, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the organizers of this conference. They have worked with us for a long time all over Albania. Our Women Network is an open volunteer platform which aims at raising awareness and strengthening capacities of women, not only victims of violent extremism or radicalization, but they can also be key to solving certain conflicts at the local level. And we have not done this alone. As I mentioned, we have done this together with civil society organizations, and many of you here today represent some of those organizations through some close cooperation with the local and central institutions for empowering our national referral mechanism. Women and girls have contributed to addressing concrete cases. During training we have done for the 3 last years, we can say that at the local level we have had more than 1,500 participants, and 64.7% of them have been women and girls. And again, this is an indicator of the inclusive nature of such training. There's research at the national level analyzing the push and pull factors that lead women towards violent extremism or radicalization. And such research shows that there are 3 such factors that have led to Albanian women leaving for the war countries. I would mention women going to join their husbands, lack of economic opportunities in remote poor areas, as well as radical ideology. They have all played their role. Open source research shows that about 1,075 people from the Western Balkans have left during 2012 to 2016 towards conflict areas. We can say that about 35% of those were women and children. Our country has publicly expressed its willingness to return all Albanian citizens who are still in camps in conflict areas in Syria and Iraq, mostly women and children. We are also working to identify the role of women in the so-called terrorist groups and the importance the women have in these groups. And these roles go from traditional roles like women as housewives, technical roles, which includes recruitment, operational support, or logistic coordination, espionage. It even includes suicide attacks. However, we can say that the role of 9 women returned from the conflict areas is mostly women as housewives taking care of their houses and children. That is why Albania has addressed their role in a very sensitive way, considering this as a state responsibility and especially as a humanitarian cause, which is important for Albania. During the last year, our center has paid special importance to women and girls affected by this phenomenon. And we have focused not only on the vulnerable nature of women when it comes to women joining radical ideologies and not necessarily religion-based. We have focused on the potential of women to promote the importance of religious tolerance. And this is almost the end of my speech, and I can finally say that our joint efforts so far for empowering women and for preventing violent extremism and radicalization are very promising. However, our efforts are not yet enough. As the Deputy Speaker of the Assembly, Mrs. Felai, said, we would like to do even more. We are not happy with what we have done. We wish we could achieve even more, empowering women, especially at the local level, considering them key to solving conflicts. Albania is recognized today by its international partners as an example of a success story. How can we measure success? Well, it takes years. However, I can already say, as the director of the Counter-Violent Extremism Center under the Minister of Interior, Mr. Bala, that we remain determined to further implement interventions at all the levels of our society through some cross-institutional cooperation, including the state institutions, the civil society, the religious communities, and any other interest groups, including also academia. So we would do that not only by sharing information or raising awareness, but what is most important, by creating synergies for creating resilient communities focused on women and girls. Considering the increased contribution that Albania has given recently in the United Nations context, not only as a temporary member of the Security Council, but also as one of the 87 members of the global coalition against ISIS and against any other phenomenon that could lead to terrorism, allow me to finish my speech by referring to what Mr. Guterres, the Secretary General of the UN, has said. We cannot achieve any of our objectives unless we have women and girls participating in the process. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be with you today. Hello, everyone. Dear Mrs. Felay, the Deputy Speaker of the Assembly, dear Mrs. Kochiu, Minister of Health and Social Protection, dear Mrs. Fino, dear Mrs. Dervishi, dear Mrs. Anderlini, dear ambassadors, representatives of the diplomatic corps, dear colleagues. As the co-organizer of the 10th Forum of the International Network of Civil Society for Women, Peace and Security, allow me to warmly thank you for your presence and the time. Opening this session in the Parliament of Albania with the participation of representatives from 47 countries gives a new dimension to this activity, emphasizing the importance of Resolution 1325 for women, peace and security at the global level. This session shows the dedication and support offered by all our partners in advancing this agenda in our country, including state institutions, international organizations, embassies, and civil society. It is thanks to this cooperation that the government of Albania has managed to promote a success model in security, as it was mentioned by the previous speakers. Dear Mrs. Felay, allow me to thank you for giving us the opportunity to be here in the Parliament, the highest legislative body in the country, where every legislative initiative takes place. I would like to express my gratefulness to the President's Office, the Parliament, and the Municipality of Tirana for supporting us and for welcoming us. Albania, with its important position in the Western Balkans, a region with a conflicting and disturbed past, has managed to adopt this resolution with its policies and strategies. This has led to a better participation of women in policy-making processes, emphasizing the role Albania has in the region and beyond. The international organizations operating in our country are the main supporters of Resolution 1325, Women, Peace and Security, and other strategies approved by the strategy. I'd like to thank everyone present for their support and for their presence here today. Dear activists, dear peace builders, dear members of the Network for Security and Leadership, WASL, thank you. Welcome to Albania. Well, it is the first time for many of you to visit Albania, and we are happy to welcome you in our beautiful and hospitable country. I'd like to particularly thank the organizers of ICAN led by Mrs. Sanam and Mrs. Anderlini, one of the main contributors to promoting Resolution 1325 with the United Nations from the beginning, from 2000. This network supports and promotes this agenda in many countries of the world. It offers protection to women in conflict areas and in cases of emergencies. Dear participants, we have among us women who build peace, women who have faced consequences of war and who still face consequences of war. We are grateful to you for the values you share with us. We're grateful to your resistance. Dear Mrs. Cochillo, I'd like to congratulate you for your work, for the coordination by the ministry and other institutions. Thanks to you, we have a second action plan for 2023-2027. This plan is closer to local institutions and it creates opportunities for the civil society. I'd like to encourage sharing of experiences, raising awareness, so we have more general interest for the resolution. Even though resolution 1250, there is no action plan for it yet. WCDC and other organizations like RICO, UNA, the Youth National Congress, they do promote this agenda almost every year in their various events through concrete commitments. Youth in Albania is characterized by vital energy, and they have demonstrated in the international arena that Albanian young people lobby for peace and global peace and security. We focus on contributing at the local level through strategies approved by the Parliament, focusing particularly on the Convention on Human Rights, strategy for gender equality, the National Strategy for Prevention of Violent Extremism, the National Strategy for Resolution 1325, and finally, the strategy against the use of small and light weapons, thanks to cooperation with the Ministry of Interior and the OSCE. Our membership in ICAN from 2018 has given us the opportunity to put in practice an inclusive approach to guaranteeing peace by benefiting from multicultural diversity. First of all, our approach to Resolution 13 and 25 is a constructive one. We intend to raise local capacity and local mechanisms like the National Security Councils. We give recommendations for the second action plan. Secondly, we lobby for encouraging social groups, encouraging better participation of women, especially in security issues. We also work on raising awareness of young people and increase their participation, where more than 1,000 young people have been part of activities for raising awareness about Resolution 1325 and other resolutions over the 2 last years from WCDA in many local government units. Fourth, in our psychological and social services, we've had events for women victims of war and conflict. Our leading principle is social cohesion and trust. We see this as the main glue that puts all that keeps all the society together. With certain values declining, we focus on applying good practices to improve the life of our communities, so we are better capable of coping with conflict. And finally, I'd like to express my deep conviction that it is our duty, it is the duty of all of us to make sure that women are involved, and this benefits the entire society. The capacity of women to solving conflicts is a vital asset. Women promote peace non-stop, and this mission needs to continue in order to object to what is wrong, in order to object to violence and war. Above all, we need to promote the culture of security at the local and global level. Thank you.
Falamandarit. Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, my friends and colleagues in the Women's Alliance for Security Leadership. This is an extraordinary invitation, an honor to speak with you here today. But before I begin, I want to thank you and your country for putting your mouth and your heart genuinely together for women. You opened your doors for Afghan women in 2021 at a time of extreme crisis and darkness in their country. You continue to host so many of them here in Albania. When many other countries didn't. So we are grateful to you on behalf of our Afghan sisters. I'm also grateful to you for hosting us, our forum, our 10th annual forum on women, peace and security here in Albania. There are not many countries that offer visas and enable us to bring people from Nigeria and Colombia and Yemen and all these other places. Many countries are building walls. You gave us a bridge. And you may ask, why are we talking about these issues of peace and security now? Why we as women are stepping into this space which has often been the space of men, political men and military men? And the answer is really simple. It's because the old ways of doing business are simply not working for any of us. Today in the world, there are over 363 million people who are in need of dire humanitarian assistance. Over 110 million people are displaced in their own countries or as refugees because of wars. We start wars and we don't stop them. We have, for the first time in history, children are the majority of the victims of the wars being fought by men for power, often led by men sitting far away from the theaters of war. So what happens? We as women, my colleagues, my friends, my partners here, and many, many others like them across their countries, whether it's in Cameroon or Yemen or Sri Lanka or Pakistan or Liberia, I look at you all. These women step in. When others turn away, when others run away, they step in. When others abrogate their responsibility to protect, these women step in to take on that responsibility. This is what this agenda was about from the beginning back in 2000. Many of us were younger when we got involved in this agenda, and we saw the nature of these wars. We saw that simply bringing political and military men to discuss and argue about power sharing was not the way to sustainable peace. We need to not only change the way we do peacemaking and bring the peace actors into the rooms where negotiations are happening, we need to change our language. We need to change from thinking about power sharing, because power is for me, to talking about responsibility sharing. Because if you want to be Minister of Finance in a country that's been devastated by war, you better have a plan about how you're going to look after your people. So this is what women do. They change the framing, they change the focus, they change the attention away from the places of privilege to those that are underprivileged. And they put their own lives on the line to mitigate the conflict, to end the violence, to assist. In our network, we have partners from 43 countries around the world. They are all locally rooted, independent, women-led peacebuilding organizations. Our alliance is called the Women's Alliance for Security Leadership, WASL, which in Arabic and Farsi and Swahili and Urdu, it means to connect. And this is what we do. We connect with each other because we need each other for solidarity, for learning, for sharing, and for the shared vision that we have for the future of the world. And our approach is very simple, really. We've made the choice to say that when you have a conflict, whether it's in your family or in your community or at a state level, Violence is one method of resolving that conflict. But we don't have to use violence. Violence is a choice. Violence is not given from God. Violence is not something that happens in nature. Violence is a human choice. Every bullet, every bomb, every drone is a choice being made. And we in our network have chosen to refuse that choice. We have chosen to say that we will take the courage to sit together and discuss however uncomfortable that may feel, but it is better to use our brains and our imagination and our heart to look for a shared future than to hide behind weapons and bombs that are killing our future, because it is the children that are suffering and dying. We are killing our future right now. So this is our network. We choose to reject that approach to resolving these disputes. I want to thank you for having us in Albania, because your diversity is actually a model of what we should be looking for in the world today. Everywhere else, we are seeing depths of polarization, of hate speech, of people becoming separated and atomized and being divided. Instead of our diversity being a strength, we are seeing our diversities turned into differences and divisions. And yet what we really need is for our diversities to be changed in terms of our similarities, to see across the world, whether we are coming from Africa or Asia or the Middle East, that actually we have a shared humanity. So our diversities need to go to similarities and to social cohesion. And what we're seeing here in Albania is that you're doing that. You are putting that into practice, however difficult it is. You're doing that, and you are drawing on the wisdom of your women in your communities in terms of what they care about. And this is what we do in WASL. We work with our partners. They are drawing on the richness of their cultural heritage, their faith, their traditions, the law, their kinship structures, to prevent violence, to look and see what is happening to the young people in their communities, and not simply to try and shut it down, but to say, what should we be offering people? What's the aspirations? What are the grievances? How do we address these issues? And to try and find solutions and use our imagination and creativity. We need governments to work with us. We as civil society can't do this alone, but we can be good partners to you, and we can bring that reframing. One of the things that as women we do is we question things. So for example, many years ago in South Africa, they wanted to buy lots of weapons, and the women said, why are we buying all these weapons? Why are we spending all this money on jets and submarines? And they went to their communities and they asked a simple question. They said, what is the source of insecurity that we face? And the answer was poverty, and it was water that was polluted, and it was HIV/AIDS, all the things that today we also see in the world, climate, pandemics. Are we spending our money on preventing those issues and fostering human security? Or are we spending it on militarization? Global military budgets are now $2 trillion, development assistance, social programming, all these aspects of human security are being cut. And we as women challenge that. We're reframing that, and we want to work with you. This Women, Peace and Security agenda that many of us worked on back in 2000 wasn't just about women's rights. It was an agenda for peace for everybody, and it was an agenda for transformative equality. And by that, I mean that from the outset till today, those of us who work on this, work on it because we do not want any of our girls or our boys to ever have to experience the horrors of war, to be a victim as a civilian, or to be a soldier that is maimed and killed, or is forced to maim and kill. It's about peace for all of us and the ability to live together as the human family. And what's extraordinary is that despite all of our diversities, this agenda has stood the test of time, and it is expanding and becoming ever more relevant. And so I want to thank Albania for its leadership in this agenda, for its leadership in practicing the idea of having more women in decision-making, for addressing things like violent extremism and understanding the complexities. and partnering with us. And I'd like to invite you to partner with us going forward into the international spaces, and to have you as a role model to so many other countries, because these days we are in dire need of countries to stand with us, to be a role model of hope and diversity and pluralism, and Albania is being that. So thank you very much for having us. And Madam Deputy Speaker, I wanted to give you this gift from all of us for your office and to remember us. Thank you.
Allow me to warmly thank the honorable women for their speeches, for their contribution, and especially for their commitment and dedication to this important cause for women, peace, and security. Allow me once again to emphasize that the organization of this forum today and the participation of each of you today demonstrates the power and importance of international cooperation in our joint efforts for women, peace, and security. And finally, at the end of this opening session, I would like to thank you all, and especially those women coming from more than 40 countries of the world. I would like to thank the peacebuilding women. I'd like to thank those who come to Albania for the first time. I wish you success for the rest of the session, and I would like to invite you to enjoy Albania, to enjoy the beauty, the values, the tradition, and hospitality of Albania, which is one of our values we are proud of. So at the end of this session, I would also invite you to watch this short video which tells you about the Women's Center for Development and Culture in Albania. It is about the implementation of Resolution 1325. Thank you very much, and I wish you all success.
United Nations Resolution 1325 is a key document to ensure human rights and mainstream gender equality in peace and security efforts. Together with the other sub-resolutions adopted below, brought about significant changes in international peace policy over the past 23 years. Advancing the Women, Peace, Security agenda at the international and European level remains essential, strengthening the voice of women, especially in conflict areas. Resolution 2250, adopted in 2015, highlights the positive role of youth in peacebuilding. At the national level, Albania is committed to the implementation of the UN Security Council Resolution 1325. With the approval of the first National Action Plan 2018, women were placed in key decision-making positions. By the end of 2023, over 100 civil society organizations in 22 countries have received support to work for peace, tolerance, and to address obstacles to women's participation in negotiation processes. WCDCA, with a 15-year activity, is focused on several priority areas. 1. Prevention and countering of violent extremism, PCVE. 2. Promotion and implementation of resolutions for peace and security at the local and national level, 1325 and 2250. 3. Building sustainable communities through education, economic empowerment, protection of human rights. 4. Regional and international partnership for increasing expertise, exchange of practices, and networking. The projects implemented by WCDCA during 2019 to 2024 aim to engage women and young people in the promotion of peace and human rights. 1. Through the implementation of She Builds Peace 2020 to 2023 campaign women, young men and women were engaged as facilitators and advocates for the promotion of human rights and protection from discrimination, with over 1,000 beneficiaries. 2. A special importance in the context of the recognition and implementation of of 1325 by local actors and decision makers, such as municipalities, has been the 2-year project spread over 2 phases during the period 2021 to 2023. An integrated approach to promote women and youth peace builders in Albania, supported by ICAN, with the aim of creating local networks and functional structures to provide more information and civil engagement for safer and more sustainable communities. Among the main results of the project, we mention 220 specialist women in 11 municipalities increased knowledge on Resolution 1325 and the National Strategy for Countering Violent Extremism. 240 young people learned about resolutions 2250 and 1325 and designed Peace in My Reality projects, created Women Peace Builders Network, 33 members, and Albanian Youth Peace Builders Network, 35 members. Held the first conference for Women Peace Builders Network, and the Youth Peace Talk event was promoted for the first time. The second phase of the project, Empower Women and Youth Peace Builders in Albania, aimed to empower Women Peace Builders Network through the Training the Trainer program, resulting in the deepening of knowledge on the framework of the action plan approved in 2018 and familiarity with the structure of the mechanisms of public safety councils and the integration of 1325 of these councils. The project was extended to 4 new municipalities, where TOT facilitators trained 180 women and young participants. The regional conference, Strengthening the Women Role to Peacebuilding and 1325 Implementation, engaged more than 70 stakeholders. In the field of PCVE, some of the latest implemented projects from WCDCA are Mothers First, implemented in 3 municipalities to raise awareness and address the challenges of violent extremism for 100 women and strengthen the parent-teacher-student relationship to address issues of radicalism. The Sustainable Community-Based Reintegration of Albanian Nationals Returning from Syria project, supported by GCERT, significantly impacted the PCVE process and DRR practices. Key outcomes included the creation of 10 women councils to build social cohesion in 10 hotspot areas, 321 participants, 11 men, 310 women. Additionally, 30 community meetings were held, led by women council coordinators, 588 participants, 154 men, 421 women, 12 young people. 10 community initiatives were launched and implemented, 273 participants, 224 women, 49 men. After-school courses and professional trainings were offered for women and children returnees, 18 children in foreign language courses, 3 in the after-school program, and 2 women in VT courses. Peace Builders lobby for safe communities, aim to strengthen the Youth Peace Builders Network through the TOT format, training 22 young people to be facilitators on resolutions 1325 and 2250 and human rights. Youth facilitators train their peers in 10 administrative units, engaging 300 young people from rural areas in the design of youth community initiatives. Sub-grants implemented by young people involved 500 peers through diverse activities and campaigns developed by them. Recently, WCDCA has signed a Memorandum of Understanding with the Ministry of Interior, OSCE, and other organizations to raise awareness on the dangers and misuse of firearms, an issue closely related to gender-based conflict and violence, in line with the 1325 Action Plan. Cooperation and mutual understanding are essential to accomplish goals and achieve efficient results. Investing in building a strong network of civil society organizations is key to promoting leadership and building a flourishing environment for collaboration. The Deputy Speaker of the Parliament, Mrs. Erminella Village, said, United Nations Resolution 1325 should be read in today's context and translated into clear plans of action by every state institution to ensure the inclusion of girls and women and adequate financial support for their needs. Therefore, let us be steadfast promoters of women's freedoms and rights.
Honorable Deputy Speaker of the Assembly, Mrs. Felay, dear ministers, dear ambassadors, and excellent representatives coming from the entire world. So following the opening session of the ICAN, in cooperation with Women's Center for Development and Culture, under the title Building Peace in Times of Pessimism, the role of women, peace and security agenda. As the moderator of the second session, I would like to welcome you and to express my satisfaction to have you here as in the Parliament of Albania. So the speech of Mrs. Anderlini was an excellent opening for the second session. Preserving peace and security is a process where we all play a primary role, and this is best testified by the resolution of the United Nations Security Council 1325, Women, Peace and Security, which, as few documents, requires a significant cooperation between the institutions and the civil society as the main pillars of the society. Cooperation in our country was essential to drafting national action plans for the implementation of Resolution 1325. Such a cooperation between the civil society and institutions is key to creating a safe environment, a favorable environment for women as peace builders, as promoters of human rights. The civil society and other important international actors in Albania have played a very important role in drafting both action plans, both in the first and the second action plan, drafted and approved in 2018 and 2023. The role of the coalition between UN Women, the Dutch Embassy in Albania, the OSCE presence in Albania, the Embassy of the United States of America in Albania, the Swedish Embassy, and other civil society stakeholders has been unquestionable. The civil society was part of the group working on the first action plan for the implementation of Resolution 1325. It was also part of the monitoring groups for the implementation of this action plan. It was also a main stakeholder in drafting the second action plan for the implementation of Resolution 1325. I would also like to particularly mention the role that the organization Women, Peace and Security has played in this process. The approach taken by the Republic of Albania is an approach that reflects the inclusion of the civil society in drafting gender equality policies in Albania. I can share with you that in 100% of our policies for both action plans, the civil society organizations and international partners in Albania have been important players, either contributing or taking responsibilities for the implementation of these plans. Dear participants, we will have the pleasure to hear today from important players who have played an important role in drafting the resolution. So we will hear from them about the interaction between the civil society and local institutions for the implementation of these action plans. Well, first, and I would like to also inform you about a small change in the agenda. I would like to first invite the Dutch ambassador in Albania, Mr. Reinhold Bos, who will share with us the Dutch approach to creating solidary ecosystems. Secondly, we have the pleasure to have Ambassador Michael Taran, the head of OSCE presence in Albania. He will focus on the role of the OSCE in the process of action plans in Albania and the security dimension and the interaction with the civil society. Third, we will have Mr. Michele Ribota, who represents UN Women in Albania. Well, UN Women in Albania has been one of the most important partners when it comes to supporting both action plans in Albania, both for the drafting process and for supporting the state institutions and civil society organizations to advance the women's security and peace agenda in Albania. We will also have Mrs. Michelle Cavaz, who is the Deputy Ambassador, U.S. Ambassador in Albania. She will focus on the partnership with the civil society organizations. We will then have the honor to have with us Mrs. Robina Rubin-Bawa, who is the National Coordinator of the Coalition for Action 1325. She's also a member of the Women Alliance for Security Leadership from Uganda. And we will have the pleasure to hear from her the story of this advocacy coalition for advancing the UN Security Council resolution. We will hear from her about women's participation in negotiations for peace, drafting of action plans for the implementation of Resolution 1325, advocacy with the Parliament for laws protecting women's rights. And finally, one of the excellent representatives of the Albanian civil society who has contributed genuinely in drafting the first and second action plan. That is Mrs. Ines Leskaj, who is the executive director of the Women Empowerment Network in Albania. She will tell us the fantastic experience of Albania in creating Coalition 1325 with 13 NGOs involved in advancing our agenda for women's security and peace. I'd like to thank all the speakers for their contribution. And I believe that with their contribution, we will see that building peace is not only a matter of institutions, but it is a matter for the entire society. I would like to invite the speakers one by one, and I wish you all success. So, Mr. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Dear Deputy Minister, colleagues and guests, what an honor to speak here in the Parliament of Albania. More than 2 decades ago, the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 marked a turning point in history by embedding women's rights and gender equality in the international peace and security agenda for the first time. It recognizes that women play differently, often vital, roles in achieving peace and security as peacemakers, community leaders, breadwinners and combatants. And now it is a meeting under the title Peacebuilding in a Time of Pessimism. And yes, there is reason for pessimism. We live in a world that becomes unsafer every day, in a world where indeed, as was said, wars are started but not finished, and where indeed, as was said, men still wage the wars. So, in a perhaps desperate attempt to be optimistic, let's continue the good work of the Security Council resolution. As was also said, it is remarkable that this process does continue. The UN Security Council Resolution 25 has a transformative purpose. Women's participation can draw more attention to conflict prevention and encourage non-violent conflict resolution. Effective peacemaking, in particular conflict prevention, peace negotiations, peace building and conflict resolution requires that these processes are inclusive at all levels. It also requires all actors involved to adopt a gender perspective when looking on matters of peace and security. And let me once again acknowledge Albania's wonderful performance at the UN Security Council over the past years as a member. and really not only as a strong and engaged member, but also as a very visible member, which is another sign that Albania is one of the most important security players nowadays. A lot has been achieved in these last years since the agenda of the resolution took shape in Albania, and the first National Action Plan 1325 for the period 2018-2020 saw light and was adopted in September 2018. And let me mention the Albanian stakeholders that did so much for this: the Ministry of Health and Social Protection, the Ministry of Interior, the Albanian State Police, not to forget, the Ministry of Europe and Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Defense, and of course, all those civil society activists and players. I've had the pleasure to meet most of them in the past years, and I'm looking forward to continue meeting them. Now, what is the Dutch link to this process? In the Dutch National Action Plan 1325, the cooperation between civil society organizations, ministries, and knowledge institutions is an important characteristic. Joint establishment and coordination of the action plan with civil society organizations is a unique component of our process, being the first National Action Plan 1325 ever to be co-signed by civil society. With this experience, we have supported Albanian stakeholders and organizations on the ground to pursue their women, peace and security agenda. We are happy to see that the Dutch model has materialized in the Albanian context. Let me emphasize here that CSOs, and in particular women's rights organizations, play a critical role in influencing and changing this enabling environment. Strengthening the women, peace and security agenda and applying a gender lens to security analysis may sound a little abstract, but it is vital that together we work towards a world of greater opportunity. A world where equality and dignity and rights are just not words on paper, but a lived reality. A world where we perhaps can become optimistic again. There is still work to do worldwide, in the Netherlands and Albania, as we know. So to conclude, the Netherlands will be here at your side with further implementation and achievements. Let's keep up the good work and indeed the good spirit. Thank you very much.
Dear members of Parliament,
colleagues from the diplomatic corps, representatives of international organizations, dear organizers of this conference, let me first of all thank you for your invitation, which has a special significance for me because I just arrived in Albania, and it's my first activity here. And when I received your invitation last week, and I was asked whether I would take part in this event, I said, of course I will. It's organized at the Parliament, which is an important partner for us, for OSCE. It's organized by civil society, and in my personal life, I've dedicated 4 years of my life, professional life, to cooperation with civil society. This event is dedicated to peace building and to promote women's action in peace building. All those are exactly at the core of the presence in Albania of OSCE. So, of course, I'm very happy to be here with you, very thankful for your invitation. A study of peace processes of the past 30 years found that only 13 of the negotiators were female. However, as reported earlier during this conference, women's meaningful participation greatly improved the sustainability of peace processes. Where women are absent, peace agreements carry an increased risk of falling apart, and a relapse into conflict becomes more likely. This indicates the importance of their involvement in long-term peace and stability. OSCE presence in Albania continuously for the last 27 years pays great attention to gender mainstreaming of national policies and legislation, and together with partner organizations such as UN Women, and the Dutch Embassy, where we contributed to the coordination of efforts that resulted in the adoption of the first ever Women, Peace and Security Action Plan of Albania, implemented in 2019-2020, and to the preparation of the current one. The presence, together with UN Women, co-chaired the Gender and Women in Decision-Making Working Group and Working Group on United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325. The latter has been very vocal in supporting the drafting process and approval of the first National Action Plan. OSCE presents as engagement to support Albania's National Action Plan on UN Security Resolution 1325 has shown that civil society activists and associations are crucial for promoting and advancing the national action plans, especially when it comes to their practical implementation. In particular, women's rights organizations played an important role in coordinating concerted efforts to advance the country's women, peace and security agenda through networking for advocacy and lobbying, as the experience of the Albanian Network on Women, Peace and Security has shown. While Albania has made great strides in the policy domain, there is a need for further efforts to address the gender disparities in Albania. While there are notable achievements like increased female representation, this was already said several times this morning, in the government, there are areas in need of improvement, such as women's underrepresentation in security sectors. Today, I want to also highlight how OSCE programs and initiatives are not only contributing to strengthening women's leadership, but also to our comprehensive approach to security. Let me share 3 examples of how OSCE presence has closely partnered with civil society and the state to address key security issues: combating violent extremism, enhancing local safety, and controlling small arms and light weapons proliferation. By bringing together representatives from various sectors, the OSCE has significantly increased cooperation in preventing and countering violent extremism and radicalization leading to terrorism. Notably, our outreach meetings have successfully engaged 991 local stakeholders, demonstrating our dedication to ensuring interinstitutional coordination and a unified front in prevention. In our efforts to address security and safety issues within local communities, the establishment of local safety councils has proven to be a significant model, supported by the OSCE presence in Albania since 2016. These councils are designed to address the most pressing security needs of their local communities. A crucial aspect of our work is the small arms and light weapons awareness and community engagement, which serves as a testament to our commitment to fostering an equitable ecosystem for peace. Over the past 5 years, Albania has witnessed 1,737 firearm incidents, tragically affecting many lives, including 132 women. In response, we have developed the National Awareness Raising and Communication Strategy on the misuse of small arms and light weapons, and an accompanying action plan. These initiatives underscore the significance of constructive dialogue and robust community involvement in mitigating the risks of weapon proliferation and misuse. Our collaboration with civil society organizations and local safety councils is pivotal, as these entities are invaluable partners, particularly in reaching and mobilizing hard-to-reach groups. Together, we are dedicated to implementing comprehensive small arms light weapon awareness-raising campaigns, emphasizing the critical role of community engagement in enhancing public safety and building a peaceful society. Let me conclude by re-emphasizing the importance of civil society and state partnership in creating an equitable ecosystem for peace. The OSCE presence remains available to work with all actors in Albania to build a more resilient, peaceful and just society. Faleminderit shumë për vëmendjen tuaj, për mikpritjen tuaj në Kuvenit Kombëtar.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation to this important event. It is really, thank you so much also to the organizers and to the hosts. I think it is very exciting, and it gives us a lot of hopes to see so many women and a few men as well who every day speak up and work together to say loud and clear that there are indeed different ways than violence with which we can handle conflicts, the conflicts that we face every day in our communities, in our countries. Indeed, many of the speakers before me have highlighted the importance of the UN Security Resolution 1325 that almost a quarter of a century ago sort of defined and shaped what we today call the Women, Peace and Security Agenda. I think in this room many of us are also very much aware that 24 years after its adoption, this resolution continues to go largely unimplemented. And this is, of course, a cause of big concerns for all of us. I think just to give a flavor of the extent to which the resolution remains unimplemented, in the past few years, the number of women who live in countries that are directly or indirectly affected by conflict has increased by 50%. It has reached, it has passed 600 million women and girls, which is an absolutely shameful number. Of all of the peace agreements by 2022, all of the peace agreements that the United Nations had been formally involved in supporting or sponsoring, only 16% of negotiators were women. Down 5 percentage points from in the previous 5 years. Also, very surprisingly, of all of the peace agreements that were made in 2022, only 1/3 of those agreements contain specific provisions to address gender equality issues that sort of affect the conflict resolution. And while that percentage has gone up since 2000 3 times, this still tells us that nowadays every 3 agreements, 2 of them are completely gender blind. And lastly, previous speakers have spoken about money, about spending for military enterprise, and indeed this is a great cause of concern. While military spending is increasing, investments for peace building, investments for the implementation of national action plans lags behind very, very concerningly. I think for us in UN Women, the support to promoting and implementing a women, peace and security agenda is a key part of our work. We do this in a number of ways. We try to let's say, focus on the promotion of women participation of women as mediators, as negotiators. We also, and also as peacekeepers across the countries where the United Nations or regional organizations sort of have a mandate to sort of run political missions or peacekeeping interventions. Also, we are very much involved in promoting transitional justice processes that sort of implement gender lenses, so that all of the social conversations about transitional justice and peace and reconciliations do not forget women as victims of crimes during the times of conflict, which is, of course, a very, very important measures if we want also reconciliation to actually bear impact over the long term. And then one other, let's say, last key entry points for us in which we try to promote the agenda is by working in every country on the development, implementation and reporting of the national action plans under Security Council Resolution 1325. And this is what we have also done in Albania in partnership with many members of the international organizations, including the OSCE, the Dutch Embassy and the national institutions, but also trying to make sure that not only for the development, but also for the monitoring and implementation of the plans, let's say national institutions are able to really bring on board members of civil society, benefit from the contribution of civil society organizations, which we think is extremely important. In the case of Albania, other speakers have highlighted how Albania has made really substantial progress when it comes to participation of women across various levels of leadership, including in politics and in political representations at central and local level. I also want to highlight the very, very increasing and important role of women in diplomacy in Albania, which is, of course, extremely important also when it comes to providing a different perspective to conflict resolution. One of the other key priorities of the let's say second plan that was recently adopted by the National Council on Gender Equality is to continue to make efforts to increase representation of women in the security sector. This is an area where progress from the first to the second plan, from the first plan, has been weak, to be honest. There has been some progress, but the percentage of women representation in the police forces or in the military in Albania continues to remain quite low. So we are very eager and, of course, ready to support any measures that attempts to establish concrete targets by the end of the National Action Plan, but also any measures that can actually not only encourage more women to enter the security sectors, but also to stay in the security sectors, because we know that this is a sectors that traditionally is very, the culture of the security sectors, of the police and of the military, is traditionally male-dominated, and this is not only happening in Albania. So it takes time, but it also takes dedicated efforts to make sure that once women enter the ranks, they're actually supported to stay. So this is why we've been working in the past, both with the police forces and the Ministry of Defense, to make sure that within the administration there is a sort of a robust anti-harassment policy, and that there is capacity that is built across the ranks of the security sector administration to make sure that those policies are fully implemented. Speaking about working with civil society, and I'm concluding, we've also, in the past couple of years, we've also been trying to work a lot with the youth, not only in Albania, but also across the larger Western Balkan region. Other speakers have mentioned the importance and the interlinkages between Security Council Resolution 1325 and Security Council Resolution 2250, which are indeed mutually reinforcing. We are specifically implementing a program funded by the UN Peacebuilding Fund that is sort of focusing and investing on youth as really engines and champions for trust, for inclusion and for equality. We know and we hear from the youth of this region they want to build relationships among them that are based on diversity, on tolerance, on respect for people's rights and mutual collaboration, and really get away from the legacy that our generation has left to them. Last year we launched a youth-led research. The role of UN Women was simply to provide a platform for over 1,000 youth to come together to actually do research, to talk to each other, and to interview key policymakers on the specific interlinkages between social cohesion and gender equality. And we have found, and they have told us, including through a survey across the countries of the Western Balkans, that they know and they see investments in gender equality, investments in education, as well as investments in youth participation as critical to build stronger and more resilient communities in this region. So, of course, we will continue to work with youth from a region. We will also continue to leverage and to use the women, peace and security and the youth peace and security agendas to make sure that youth can become champions of these agendas in the region, because it's only through them that we can really see a radical change from the very negative legacies of the past. So I wanted to thank you again, but I just wanted to also recognize, speaking about the National Action Plan in Albania, I wanted to recognize also the role of our moderator, who has been a constant technical support both for the implementation and monitoring on the first plan, as well as for the development of the second plan. So thank you very much again for being here, and enjoy your stay in Albania.
Hello. Thank you, Aralda, for the great moderation of this important panel. And hello and welcome to all of my wonderful colleagues here, Albanian colleagues, colleagues from the DIP Corps, and from apparently around the world. I think I heard 47 countries. That's amazing. First, I'd like to say, as the Deputy Speaker mentioned quite kindly, the U.S. government and the U.S. Embassy here in Tirana is dedicated to supporting the Women, Peace and Security agenda, and we have also supported the drafting of the National Action Plan. But today I'm going to talk about one specific piece, how we're implementing with the Women, Peace and Security agenda here in Albania. Although first I did want to recognize, thank you, Representative Rabata, for talking about the importance of women in law enforcement. That's another aspect of the Women, Peace and Security agenda that we're also implementing in a very similar way to make sure we're not just thinking about recruitment of women in the law enforcement sector, but also professional development and leadership to make sure we have retention in that important sector as well. But I'm going to talk about USAID and a specific sector in which we believe it's important to work to implement this agenda, and that's tapping into the power of local communities. True change starts at the grassroots level, where municipal governments and civil society working together can empower women as agents of change. This local collaboration creates an equitable ecosystem for peace, not just with policy decided at the national level, but with action at the local level, affecting the very fabric of communities. And Deputy Minister Fino said, what is achieved, it's not just what's achieved in policy, but what's achieved in practice. I think she put it very well, what I was trying to express. And as the Women, Peace and Security agenda emphasizes, meaningful participation of women in decision-making processes is crucial. And dear Avis, I think you used the word integration, and I think that was the perfect word for this. It's not just about trying to foster participation, but about the normalization of that participation. But I would say also, participation is important, but participation alone isn't enough. We need to cultivate strong partnerships, partnerships that extend from the local level all the way up to the national government. This ensures women's voices are heard and acted upon, not just symbolically, but with tangible results. And so for that reason, I'd like to mention two examples from USAID programming here in Albania. And it really opened my eyes in terms of how powerful that connection can be between local government and civil society when they work together in this space. We've invested in 3 what we call resilient centers. One's in Corbin, one's in Doris, and one's in Leja. And these centers connect the most vulnerable in their communities with the resources they need to keep them from falling through the cracks. We're implementing this with the kind strategic partnership of the municipalities themselves and the Ministry of Health and Social Protection. So it was great to see the minister here today. She's been a very strong supporter of this project. The first example I'd like to give you is from the Leisure Resilience Center. And it's a testament to the power of interwoven partnerships between civil society, community members, municipal staff, development partners, and specialized care professionals. How many people working together does it take? So last week I met someone named Maria, and her story exemplifies how these partnerships can have a life-changing impact. She escaped an abusive household with her daughter and found not just refuge at the center, but a way to rebuild her life. The Leisure Resilience Center provided her the support she needed immediately, but it was her courage to speak her truth that really impacted her whole community. She's now employed at the center itself, working alongside social workers and policymakers to create new protocols that ensure a more supportive environment for women like her facing similar challenges. So this is an illustration of how local voices, amplified through strong partnerships, can be incorporated into policy to create long-lasting change. The second example I'd like to mention comes from the Resilience Center in Convened. Here, Marika cares for her grandchildren who have special needs and are unable to travel, but she couldn't find resources for them in her remote village. The Convened Resilience Center connected her with a specialized care professional who provided home-based care so they didn't have to travel. And it was the first time this took place in Convened. So not only did Marika get specialized care that she needed, but she now participates alongside community and municipal leaders, advocating for needs-based care and removing barriers for others in Convened, shaping the future of the Resilience Center and her community. And I'd like to also mention that caregiver input into policymaking is often invisible. And the reason for that is many times when there are opportunities to provide input, such as a community town hall, caregivers, who are the majority of time women, are providing care for their families. And so we need to be purposefully inclusive to make sure we're getting all of this input. I think, Ambassador Taryn, did you say when women are absent, peace falls apart? Is that how you put it? So I think it's the same in these situations. When women are absent from these policy-making input opportunities, that's when we have trouble with our policies being implemented. So these stories illustrate why USAID places such a strong focus on local government partnerships with civil society and the communities they serve. Local governments, when empowered, have the capacity to understand the specific needs of their communities and the agility to respond quickly. I think, Mrs. Angelini, you said it's not about building walls, it's about building bridges and maintaining and using those bridges, and that happens most easily at the local level. So by fostering women's voices and creating strong partnerships between local governments, civil society, and communities, we can build a more peaceful and equitable future. I think, dear Rodina, you said social cohesion and trust. I think that was a great way to put it and exemplifies how local communities work together. And those two stories I shared with you, Enrique's story is replicable. We have a similar model in our Resilience Center in Durres. And Maria's story is a testament to the lasting power of these kinds of changes because she's there now working and directly influencing policy. We must continue to build opportunities for women to participate and be heard, and for partnerships to implement these ideas. Ambassador Voss, he said he had a desperate attempt at optimism today. Well, I'm optimistic that we can do this. And change begins at the local level. Dear lady, you said change begins with you. Change begins with all of us. And I was glad to hear you talking about change at the local level as well. Change begins at the local level. And when communities are fully invested, as they usually are in their own communities, that's when this change becomes sustainable. Thank you.
Hello. It's a singular honor for me this afternoon to talk to you and to represent the distinguished members of the Women's Alliance for Security Leadership. I come from a conflict-prone country called Uganda in East Africa. It's a least developed country, and it amazes me how much money my government spends on military wear rather than development. And military wear never builds peace. Each one of us in the Women's Alliance for Security Leadership has a story, a very unique story, and unique motivation for doing the work that we do. I will tell you a bit about my own story. Women in Uganda were part of the global women's movement that advocated for a resolution to address the impact of conflict and the need to protect women during times of conflict. This was in the 1990s, and we had a reason for that, because at the time, Uganda was going through an insurgency, a domestic insurgency. And in 2000, we got Resolution 1325. At that time, the insurgency in Uganda had been for 14 years. And we had over 3 million Ugandans, majority of whom were women and children, living in internally displaced people's camps. I visited those camps from time to time. I mobilized old clothes to take to women and children. I mobilized food together with my colleagues. It became personal, and that's part of my story. So at the time we got the resolution, to us, 1325 was not just a document. It was a tool that empowered us to do our work that we were already doing on the ground. It was a tool with which we could hold our government accountable for peace and human security in our country. And so, we started advocating for peace talks as a coalition of women peace builders. We wanted our government to sit with the Lord's Resistance Army and talk and negotiate and agree to end this war, the horrible war. Of course, like most governments, our government also believed that they could defeat the rebels militarily, but we knew it was not going to be possible. So after a long time, our government finally agreed in 2006 to have peace talks with the Lord's Resistance Army. And so they chose a delegation. To our surprise, there wasn't a single woman on the government delegation for the peace talks. The peace talks were going to be held in Juba, South Sudan. Our city is Kampala. It's quite a journey to Juba. But we said, as the Women's Peace Coalition, that there was no way there was going to be these peace talks without the women that had been affected by the conflict. And we decided we would walk to Juba and be part of the process. And we did try to walk, actually, after being flagged off by a deputy speaker of parliament. But then the corporations, the banks, the telephone companies gave us buses and packages of food. And so we found our way to Juba. And like this hall, instead of this wall, these were all curtains. There were no structures in South Sudan at that time. So these were all curtains. And the delegations were in this room, and we were seated behind the curtain on the government side, and we would scribble notes whenever we had demands of the rebels. We would scribble notes and pass them on to the government delegation, telling them what to say and what to demand. And in the evenings, we would convene meetings with the government delegation and with the UN special envoy for those peace talks. And so we ended up influencing that peace agreement. And when we did that, we thought government now would include us on the structures and committees for the implementation of the peace recovery and development plan for northern Uganda. No, they did not. And so we decided we would also establish women's committees parallel to the formal structures from the national level to the very local level. We called them the Women's Task Force for a Gender-Responsive Peace, Recovery, and Development Plan. And we would do our research. The committees of government met monthly, and we would go on radio and talk about the information that we had from the ground on how the program was being implemented. In the end, government allowed us to sit on the steering committee and various other committees. In other words, women's participation is not a guarantee. We have learned to demand for it. And I like the representative who said that it's not just participation. We demand for meaningful participation. And that is the story of each one of us from the Women's Alliance for Security Leadership. Now, our partnership with the government started taking shape as we implemented this recovery program. But then we realized that we needed specific laws in place to protect women. At that time, because of so many years of conflict, sexual violence had gone through the roof. Domestic violence and other forms of gender-based violence were everywhere in the country. It was like men learned from each other to violate the rights of women. And so we started working with special government agencies and special committees of parliament to put in place a Domestic Violence Act, an Equal Opportunities Act, complete with an Equal Opportunities Commission. There had been spades of trafficking of young girls from the conflict-affected area to different cities within the country to work as house help, and sometimes they would end up in sex brothels. So we also got the anti-trafficking in human persons law. So this was like putting together building blocks for the implementation of the first National Action Plan that had been designed without us. But we decided that we were going to monitor its implementation in 2010 as we marked 10 years of Resolution 1325. And our monitoring report provided government with the feedback they needed to realize it was not being implemented actually. That the local government structures, that the government ministries and agencies that were supposed to implement the National Action Plan, many of them did not even know that it existed. And so we started our awareness raising programs. But from 2011, during the design of our second National Action Plan, we were accorded more respect. So we were invited to participate in the design of our National Action Plan. And in the design of our third National Action Plan, we actually took lead. We took lead in holding consultations from the grassroots level, coming up to the national level to inform the content of our current National Action Plan. And right now, women's organizations and other civil society groups are represented on each of the structures of our National Action Plan for Women, Peace and Security. And as the Coalition for Action on 1325 in Uganda, we are heavily invested in meaningful implementation of our National Action Plan. We have made sure that our National Action Plan is localized, that local governments are able to put in place local action plans that address issues that would cause conflicts at family level and at community level. We have made sure that we have trained women in peace building, but also in mediation of community level conflicts. And we have created networks of grassroots women mediators in our country. We have put in place local peace committees at every governance structure that integrate both women and men. And now we have integrated Resolution 2250 because we realized the power it would create linking the women peace and security agenda and the youth peace and security agenda. So we are taking our youth from the streets. We are taking them from crime. We are turning them into leaders. We are turning them into peace builders. They are beginning to be constructive citizens of our country. So, we now have a Youth, Peace and Security Coalition, birthed by our coalition. And we are grateful for the support that we receive. And I feel privileged that our coalition is a member of the Women's Alliance for Security Leadership. Otherwise, how would I get here if it wasn't for the WASL network? For us, our network is about solidarity. It is about sisterhood. It is about standing together, shoulder to shoulder, sharing ideas, sharing knowledge, sharing experiences, building friendship that lasts a long time. Our network has made it possible for us to visit each other in our countries, to share experiences. If I'm good at localization, the network enables me to go to Cameroon and support my sisters to implement localization. And so this convergence of powerful, committed women with the history of the impact of conflict, each one of us at a personal level, has created this power that is within the room. And so the cross-learning and that we benefit from, plus being able to travel to see what is going on in Albania, and meeting good people like you and good leaders like you, and listening to the young ambassador from the United States. So when we meet here as a network, like in the hotel we are in, we are looking at what else do we need to do to make things better in our countries, for our children. I'm a grandmother. What else do I need to do to make the life of my grandchildren better? That is what WASL is about. And the work we do can be hard on us. It can be hard physically, but it is also hard emotionally, because we are working with women that are traumatized by war, by sexual violence. Women whose lives have been destroyed. It takes a toll on us. So our ability to come together as a network to support each other enables us to keep this global movement of women peace builders going. In Uganda now, we have also started integrating gender in humanitarian response. We are the highest refugee hosting country in Africa, and I think the third or fourth in the world. And we are a very poor country. So we are building bridges, even in our poverty. But when the ambassador was talking, I also was reminded of an initiative that we are implementing. We are building women's centers in refugee settlements, same as your resilience centers, offering psychosocial support, building peace from the ground, going up, training local women to offer psychosocial support, but also to give very small funds for them to start income-generating projects. Because without incomes, the vulnerability of women can never be addressed. I thank you.
Hello, everyone, dear participants, dear friends. Welcome to our country. Well, it looks like peace and security, even in terms of what everyone said here today, it looks like we all, shout peace and security. And still, only a few of us are part of peace-building missions or negotiation teams. During the 2 last decades, Albania has taken important steps towards increasing gender equality and addressing gender-based violence. Well, progress is achieved mainly in terms of legislation and other public policies. Still, the implementation of the legal framework, implementation of policies, and their translation into specific action at the local level remains a real challenge for the country. Women's rights still need to be protected. Women are not yet respected properly, and we still need to promote their rights. Albania has also made some progress when it comes to the implementation of the Women's Security and Peace Agenda through formal acts. However, a national action plan, which is approved in 2018, coordinated policies for the agenda, and it includes actually new areas like gender mainstreaming in security policies, increased participation of women in leadership, preserving peace and strengthening institutions addressing gender issues and security. Well, while numbers of women in security or police increase, the country still needs new jobs so that women can fully use their potential in the security sector or even in very high-level decision-making forums, in local security councils and else. The participation of women and girls need to be significant in preventing conflict or even in building peace. Participation of women and girls in security policies is indispensable for long-term solutions. Albania's role in the UN Security Council in 2022-2023 in terms of women's security and peace agenda gave an impetus to Albania, where cooperation with the civil society is very significant for the implementation of Resolution 1325. Women's rights organizations, especially the Albanian Coalition for Women, Peace and Security, have done a lot. They have done a lot of efforts, recognized efforts, and they have actively engaged women at the local level to influence the national legislation and even international legislation regarding this resolution. The most important contribution that the civil society has given is for the drafting of the first national action plan for 2018-2020, approved by the Albanian government, reflecting the commitment of all the line ministries. It was our coalition and other civil society organizations which, with their technical expertise, contributed and supported the Albanian government in the process. Our coalition has also played a special role in advocating with the national institutions for the implementation of the action plan. We also gave an important technical contribution during the development of the second national action plan for the implementation of Resolution 1325. Our coalition, and especially the organization Women, Peace and Security in Durrës, they clearly identify issues of peace, security, and development of gender equality agenda. Well, the right approach to this agenda sets the tone that countries like Albania can choose in advocating at the diplomatic level in other areas related with peace and security. This agenda is considered by many government players, as we heard here today, and other civil society actors as a good starting point for recognizing the impact of women organizations at the local, regional, and global level. We are convinced that the role that our network can play is and will continue to be recognized by both domestic and international organizations. In addition, we are also convinced that with this activity, we are building new bridges of cooperation and that we will continue to work together. Thank you. Dear speakers of the second panel, I would like to warmly thank you for sharing your testimonies, for giving your contribution to the development of local action plans for the implementation of Resolution 1325. I would also like to thank you for your significant commitment to building peace in your own countries. I'd like to also thank you for sharing with us keywords like inclusiveness, partnership, local government, civil society. They were naturally key to your speeches. Without them, without the commitment of national and international partners, we cannot build what Mrs. Rubinbauer mentioned, the social cohesion and trust and mutual trust. The role of the civil society was naturally mentioned by everyone, how important it is in implementing this agenda. I thank you all for being present here today. I wish that the experience you shared today served to inspire more people in preserving peace in the world. Well, I have to say that history has shown us that we can't take peace for granted. That's why strengthening solidarity and capitalizing on our synergies for the implementation of women's security and peace agenda is indispensable. Wishing you a nice day in our lovely Albania and wishing you a fruitful cooperation and fruitful 10th Forum for Women's Security and Peace, organized with the support of ICAN. I wish to invite you for a group photo. And that will be the last thing we do for this session. Thank you. So I believe we will take the group photo here, right here, where I'm standing.